So something I know I get asked about a lot, you know, and it took me a while to learn, to be honest, but you can see I've got a bunch of rods here. I'm actually getting ready for Sturgeon Bay Stage 5 coming up, Bass Pro Tour, our final event. Gonna be a lot of spinning tackle used up there, but I use braid with a fluorocarbon leader for almost all my spinning applications anymore. So I've got a whole bunch of them here to tie up, and I tie an FG knot for that. Used to tie an Alberto, and it was pretty good, but I would occasionally have instances where it failed. Rarely on a fish, but a lot of times on breaking a bait off. So went away from that, learned the FG knot. Aaron Martins actually was a person who finally made it click for me, but I actually tied one on the water and tied myself just this last week, and I can do it on the water, you know, not trying to film it or anything, in about 90 seconds. So it's, once you get it down, it's not that long of a process. Trying to go through this video and show you, it does take a little bit longer, but once you really get it down and you're not talking through it, you're just going through the knot, I can typically do it in about 90 seconds or so. But I'm gonna go through here and show you exactly how I tie it. The very first thing is that I tie a loop in the end of my braid and put that around my reel handle just to keep some tension on it. And the way that I tie that, just to start with, you take that braided line, you just loop it over itself. So you make a loop there, then you just tie an overhand knot, is all you got to do with that. So just tie an overhand knot. That's going to give you a nice big loop there. It's super easy to do. That's actually, like, if I don't have a bait on my rod and I just want to store it and just tighten the line up, that's what I do as well. Just slip it up over the rod handle. But the purpose for that is to have just a little bit of tension on that line. You don't want it to where the rod has any bend to it, but you don't really want it dangling real loose. Just barely hanging there. It's about the right amount of tension. Then I'll kind of put it under my legs to you know, to hold it in place and to hold it where I can work on it a little bit. There's my spool of 8-pound XPS fluorocarbon. That's what I use most of my leaders, 8, 10. I'll occasionally go up to 12 at a place like Lake Fork when we were down there this spring. But then next, so take that fluorocarbon and I'm gonna wrap it around my 2 fingers. I'm left-handed, so all this is, you know, makes sense to a left-hander. But I'm gonna take it, I'm gonna wrap it around those 2 fingers a couple times. And that's just so you got something to pull some tension with here in a second. But lay that over your braid. And this is the one that's going to the reel handle, not the one going to the first guide. Just lay that over the braid and go above it and below it. So there's 2 wraps. I'm going to do that 22 times. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And after like 4, I'll give it a little pull. And then after about every other 2, I will again, just kind of pull everything this way. You've already got the tension going the other way, but just give it a little bit of a snug just to kind of set those wraps in place. Keeps everything nice and straight that way. If you do a bunch of wraps before you do that, you will a lot of times it'll wad up on there. But just I'll do 2 wraps, pull a little bit. You'll actually feel it just kind of set down in place. 2 wraps, pull, and you'll feel it just sit a little bit. I actually lost count, but that should be pretty close right there. And that's a pretty good looking knot. So the actual knot itself is truly done at this point. That is what it looks like. You can see it's laying in there pretty good. I mean, those weaves are pretty even. It's not balled up anywhere. So now, take your braid, go into your rod, and your fluorocarbon leader, lay them up that way together. I actually need to trim this off here a little bit just because where I tied that extra loop. But I'm going to take this braided line, I'm going to take this braided tag, I'm going to tie an overhand around those 2 lines, my fluorocarbon tag and my main braid. There's one overhand. I'm gonna do that again. I typically leave more braid to work with there, but after the second one of those, I want to pull it down real tight, pulling with that braid tag, and then pull everything else really good and tight. And now I'm going to trim my fluorocarbon tag off pretty close. I mean, I'll trim it right down there pretty doggone close. And now I'm going to do 3 more overhands with that braid tag again. And that just kind of helps keep that knot from coming unraveled. That's the only problem you'll ever see with an FG knot, is that it will just occasionally, it'll come unraveled. These overhand knots will come undone, and it will occasionally come unraveled. That is the only chance of it ever really failing you from what I've seen. You can put some super glue on it, and that'll help a little bit with that, but I typically don't. I typically just tie those overhand knots, cinch it back down again, and then trim that dude off. But yeah, I can do that in the boat, you know, trying to do it quickly in about 90 seconds is what I timed myself doing it the other day, and I've done that before. So practice that a lot. It's an excellent knot, and it's something that I depend on for all my spinning rod fishing anymore.